Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Critical Healing Moment. If you're new here, this is a channel where I talk about social work, healing, organizing, and all things related to those areas. Before we get started in today's video, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that the world is in quite a messy state. There's so much stuff going on. The struggle for Black liberation continues. There's multiple climate crises that are in process, and there is a very bleak election season ahead of us, at least in the US. Whatever your feelings are in this moment, I hope that you can take a moment and listen to how you're feeling and honor that. Let's take a collective breath, shall we? Okay, you can take a pause on this video and continue reflecting, and when you're ready, you can come back and continue watching the video. If you're looking for resources on what you could be doing right now for Black liberation, I did make a video back in June, and you can watch it here. I know that it's been helpful for many people already, and I've gotten so much great feedback on it, and I hope that it can be helpful for you if you are feeling a little bit lost about what you can be doing now. Okay, so let's get into the video. So in the midst of everything, all the crises that happened this year, I actually finished my first year of my MSW program, and I wanted to sit down and share some of my experiences in a format of expectations and realities, and also give some guidance for anyone starting grad school this year or going into an MSW program, especially if you are an online student like I am, or if your program is starting online because of the pandemic. First things first, I wanted to go over some basic things about my program just so you know what my program's like. There's all sorts of different kinds of programs, so I just wanted to kind of lay the context. So my program is an online program with a live class component, meaning that once a week I'm expected to log on Zoom and attend class live with other students. It's also a part-time program that is done over the course of 3 years, and I'm on the traditional track, meaning that I do not have a BSW or a bachelor's in social work. So the 3 years is if you're starting from step 1 like I am. However, if you have a BSW or you have other kinds of experience that qualify, you can finish the program more quickly. So because I'm in the traditional track, that unfortunately means that I am starting from the beginning, despite all of the different experiences that I have in organizing and direct service. I started off at the same place as someone who has zero experience at all in doing any type of work with people. And I will get into that a little bit more later when I talk about how this impacts me. In my program, I take classes in the fall, winter, and summer, and I started in the fall, and I was working full-time for the first 2 semesters, so for the fall and spring, and actually for like the first quarter of the summer semester as well, I was working full-time. And I do not get a field placement in my first year. I know in some programs you start off and you're already in field placement, however, my first year we did not have a field placement. Okay, so now let's get into some expectations and realities. To be honest, when I was going into this program, I was feeling a little bit nervous because I did not study a liberal arts major in undergrad. I actually studied business, and I was right to assume that the type of work that you do in business college versus a liberal arts major is very different. Like in business school, you don't really do papers, you don't really have that much reading to do. It's a lot of just hands-on work. But I had so much doubt because I didn't have a lot of experience doing academia in this type of way. And I also didn't feel well read, and I felt inarticulate in some of the things that I thought. I have a lot of opinions, strong opinions at times, but I also feel like I'm unable to communicate them and that I don't know the right words to use. I just felt like I didn't know what I was talking about at times, even though I have, experience doing certain kinds of work. And I also took a few classes in undergrad in like sociology and women's studies and things like that. I still felt like people in the program would have so much more knowledge than me and I would be really behind. So I can see now that this is a myth that the institution of academia continues to perpetuate, that if you don't study a subject formally, you're unable to have a well-informed opinion on it and understand it in depth. In reality, I found myself to be one of the more well-informed students in my classes, and I felt more in touch with certain issues that we would talk about because of my lived experiences, which includes my experiences with my multiple layers of identity, as well as dedication to understanding how these aspects of my identity and things that I've experienced because of it relate to greater systems that exist in the world. And I also attribute it to being connected to a broader community that's also navigating these questions. I'm not doing this alone. I feel like I have many conversations where I can talk about these things that impact me, and it's not occurring in school, and I don't necessarily have to read about it to be able to process it. And that community aspect is so important. It's not just being surrounded by people who are like me, but also people who have backgrounds that are different than me, because being able to talk with them allows for me to kind of see from their perspective what issues they face within systems of oppression, even if they don't affect me directly. As someone who is a social worker in training, it is very important for me to be aware of how these things affect other people. So even though I doubted myself so much in the beginning of the program and I was very nervous, I found myself being very frustrated because I didn't feel like I was learning as much as I expected to. I felt like there would be moments that would be very mentally challenging for me, even emotionally challenging for me, and I haven't really faced that yet. I know that things will be different once I start my field placement, but in terms of just with the course material, I haven't found anything that has been too absolutely new to me. I've had a little bit of experience in navigating many of the topics that I've learned over the course of the first year. I thought that I would be jumping into learning clinical skills that would apply to working with individuals. I am on the clinical track at my school versus the macro track. However, most of the first year is dedicated to laying a foundation about social work, and we took courses on subjects such as social welfare, racial justice, human behavior, and introductions to research. I think I learned the most in the social welfare courses, which were the first two courses that I took. These courses helped me contextualize programs and institutions that I'm already a little bit familiar with, things like food stamps, tax benefits, and Social Security, and really understand them within the context of a broader US approach to social welfare. In short, the US social welfare system is not meant to take care of all of its residents adequately. It's really there in a scarcity mindset, and it's really sad that this is how the US is. I also learned a lot about the history of social work. I am actually currently working on making a video about this because I think it's such an important topic to know about if you're in the social work field or if you interact with social workers. I learned so much about it, and not really knowing much about the history of social work before I started the program, it really opened my eyes to how social work has been a part of systems of oppression and been complicit in systems. And in a time when, maybe not so much now, but at least a few months ago, everyone was talking about let's replace police with social workers, I think it's important to really look into that history and see how similar or different these two fields are in terms of using them as a tool for social control. So I'll go into that more when I have that video for you. So if you are interested in watching, I think now is a good time to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and maybe you should hit the bell notification if you're extra excited to watch this video. I hope that it can come out in the end of September. I expected to have a lot more interactions with professors, especially professors that did research. So in reality, the structure of the online program is such where there's multiple layers of staff between the student and the research professor. Usually those professors were the ones who design the courses that we take online. But the facilitators that we interact with on a weekly basis are actually part-time people who are employed by the school and are social work practitioners who have full-time jobs elsewhere. So I did get to interact with those professors some, but it is something where you need to take the initiative and reach out to them, go to their office hours, schedule meetings with them. It's not something that, they're not always going to be present with you in class. At most, they are a video clip that you watch in your online lecture course. I actually just sent an email to my course facilitator to ask about how, as an online student, I can be involved in research. I'm super curious about it, not having any type of that experience in undergrad, but I would really love to learn more about it, and especially work on some of the research projects and research areas that my school particularly specializes in, because that's the whole reason why I chose this program, because they had faculty there that were leading researchers in areas that I was super interested in. I thought it was going to be challenging to manage my time, and I was right, but it was also very doable, at least for the first year. I didn't have too much of a challenge finding time to do all the readings and assignments while I was working full-time, and it was especially easier when I was working in the city. I live in the suburbs, so I would have to take the train into the city, which allowed for me to have at least 2 hours every day to just read and not have to worry about anything else. However, during last year, my former workplace moved offices, and then I actually started to drive into the office, so then I lost about 2 hours of reading and it became a little bit more challenging. And then when we all started staying home because of the pandemic, it was extra hard to stay motivated to do my schoolwork, because I was doing my regular work in the same spot. It's my bedroom. It's also where I'm filming this video. And sit there all day, do that, and then have to do 2 to 3 hours of schoolwork at the same spot after work without having the break of the commute time, without being able to go to yoga class and take a mental break before starting that. It just all bled into each other, and it made it very hard to focus and stay dedicated to my schoolwork. So that was very mentally exhausting, and that is one of the reasons why I decided to leave my job when I did. If you're actually interested in hearing more about that, I talk more about the other reasons why I left my job in this video here. I did work in a nonprofit, and I know that's something that a lot of social workers are kind of, see themselves working in the future. Just wanted to plug that video to let you know about some things to look out for when you're working in a nonprofit. Even though I like writing, I thought that academic writing was going to be very challenging for me. It's a lot of writing in the program. Sometimes in the first semester, I had a paper due every week, literally every week. But before school started, the academic support center held a writing workshop that was super, super helpful. They kind of go over everything in terms of APA format, and then also giving you a really clear strategy on how to approach your papers, which was super helpful for me, just as a refresher, because I had been out of school for 4 years. I did not have that sort of academic writing muscle. activated and worked out. I still use that strategy for pretty much every paper. And it's been really enjoyable for me, honestly. As I said, I really do like writing, and I've found that it's really a strength of mine through the program and the feedback that I've gotten from my professors. Yeah, so it's actually been quite fun. I don't know if anyone, else thinks that. That's something to think about if you're thinking about going into a program like an MSW program, especially if it's online, is that it is a lot of writing and it's a lot of reading. So if that's not something that you're ready to do right away, maybe think about that. I expected to witness a lot of white privilege, especially in this field that is so dominated by white women, but I was not expecting the level of ignorance that I would see at times. So some students actually have no grasp about racism in the US, and I was just shocked when I heard about this. One of the things that we had to do before this program starts is we all had an introductory reading. We were supposed to read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and we had one discussion class on it. We had one discussion sort of meeting on it, which was also very messily organized, by the way. It was just like people didn't have the right call-in link, they were in the wrong room, all this sort of stuff. They didn't know what was happening. But when I was in that session, like, some people didn't know what mass incarceration was. I don't expect everyone in the world to know what mass incarceration is, although with everything that's happening, I would expect anyone who's going into social work to know what mass incarceration is. It's mind-boggling. In a way, I really felt like the white students were really handheld and coddled in the racial justice curriculum. We did have to take a racial justice course, and yeah, it was just very much catered. I could tell from the curriculum that it was written for white students, and I gave them feedback on it on my course evaluation form that a racial justice class should not be centered on whiteness, or at least they should have options for students of color and for white students to take different courses. I'm not going to say that I didn't learn anything new. Conceptually, I was familiar with a lot of the concepts already through my experiences in college, through organizing, through popular education methods. However, I did learn the importance of patience when working with white people. I know that in my practice in the future, this skill will be very useful because I will have to work with clients. Even clients of color may not have a full awareness of how race affects them and their racial identity. And so having that patience is very helpful in terms of working with clients. I hope that in the future, when I have my own practice, that I will be able to actually work with a lot of clients who want to talk about race. I think that it's a very important phenomenon that affects everyone. And so I think that this is a very useful skill that I picked up in this course. And in terms of like privilege and ignorance and things like that, there was also that one time where we were assigned a problematic reading on transgender issues. It was like kind of outdated, but being involved in spaces that have a lot of LGBT folks in them, I just knew that this article was really not great. I was about to I wrote this whole email for them, and it was like a whole essay about why this one article out of the 10 articles we had to read that week as well was not great. And I was going to send it after the live class if they did not address it. And it turns out other students had already notified the professors about it, and they said, we know this is out of date. However, their excuse was it takes a really long time to update the curriculum, which I thought was stupid. Am I allowed to say that? At the minimum, what they should have done was in the syllabus put a note in saying that this is a piece that we should look at with a critical eye, because here's the thing. If people in that class, and I absolutely know that there are people in that class who are unaware of trans issues and gender identity, that if that was the first time that they were learning about trans issues, they would have walked away completely misinformed. So I'm getting all heated because of this again, because I'm remembering that article we had to read. But yeah, so the thing is, what happens on the ground and in real life happens more quickly and is more current and up to date than academia. You know, it's always this thing, and this is something I've heard somewhere in a webinar or workshop I attended, that really the research is catching up to the practitioners. They're the one, you know, the practitioners are the ones who are being very innovative and creative, and they're implementing things even if they don't know if it doesn't work. It's really great to be experimental, of course, calculate all the risk and what you think the outcomes are going to be. However, where the research comes in is they're going to look at these creative interventions and look at, you know, what's happening and look at the phenomenon that's happening in certain communities, and they're able to solidify it as, yes, like this is, you know, this is a piece of a larger trend, or this intervention is actually working, like keep doing it, or maybe if you can tweak this, you know, in those like experimental conditions. Anyways, the whole thing is just like really realizing and sort of unlearning that academia knows everything and academia knows what's right. Actually, practitioners, people who are working with clients, know what's right, and that the research and the academia are following their lead in terms of making it legitimate. Okay, enough about that. Now I want to get into some things that those of you who may be starting MSW programs this year may want to think about, or maybe if you're considering applying for an MSW program, to think about, especially if you're an online student or considering online school, which many of you may be starting in. Hi everyone, I'm here editing the video and it ended up being much longer than I expected, so you can watch part 2 right here.